In January 1909, a car was found hanging off a cliff on the North Wales coast. Smashed windscreen, tire tracks leading to a broken wall, no driver, no body, just a tam o' shanter hat in the grass, a pocket map, and a suede diary. The whole of Britain assumed she was dead. The newspapers printed her obituary, her creditors wept, and then, 3 weeks later, police found her, hiding on a Scottish island, alive, well-dressed, completely unrepentant. Her name was Violet Charlesworth. She was 24 years old. She had no money, no inheritance, no family fortune. She had nothing, except a story. And in Edwardian Britain, if you told the right story to the right people, a story was worth everything. By the time Britain finally caught up with Violet Charlesworth, she had accumulated debts worth over £4 million in today's money. And the detail that made every single creditor feel like a fool? Almost every one of them, doctors, bankers, society gentlemen, had been warned, in writing, before they handed over the money. Stay with me. And there is one moment in this story, one specific moment at her criminal trial, that tells you everything you need to know about Violet Charlesworth. What she did in that courtroom was so audacious, so absolutely brazen, that the judge reportedly didn't know whether to sentence her or applaud. That moment is coming. Let's go back to the beginning. Violet Charlesworth was born in Stafford in 1884. Her father was a mechanic. Her family were ordinary, working-class people, not wealthy, not connected, not titled, just a family from the Midlands trying to get by. But Violet had something that money cannot buy and breeding cannot teach. She had extraordinary nerve. In 1905, she was 21 years old, and on a trip to Derby, she walked into a shop and introduced herself as Miss Violet Gordon, goddaughter of the famous British war hero General Charles George Gordon of Khartoum. General Gordon, one of the most celebrated figures in the entire British Empire, the hero of Khartoum, a man so beloved that his death in 1885 had made grown men weep in the streets. Violet told the shopkeeper that on her 25th birthday, she would inherit £100,000 from the general's estate. £100,000. In 1905, money. The shopkeeper looked at this charming, well-spoken, elegantly dressed young woman and gave her a pile of silk dresses on credit, including, and this detail is perfect, a cherry red motor cloak designed to be worn in open-top luxury cars. Violet didn't own a car, but she was going to. Now, I need you to understand something about Edwardian Britain before we go any further. Because the world Violet was operating in was absolutely tailor-made for exactly this kind of con. The Edwardian era was a period when the rich were not ashamed to live conspicuously, and aristocracy remained in control of top government offices. It was a world where your name, your connections, and your appearance were everything. In this world, nobody checked. Nobody verified. Nobody rang ahead. If you looked the part, you were the part. And Violet looked extraordinary. The silk dresses were just the beginning. Violet refined her story, polished it, added detail. In 1907, the Charlesworths moved to Rhyl, a seaside resort in Wales, where they spread word that Violet was the goddaughter of General Gordon of Khartoum and was to inherit £100,000 from his estate upon her 25th birthday. Now the story had a deadline, a specific date, a number, and Violet looked absolutely the part. She rented large houses, hired servants, bought lavish clothes and extravagant jewelry. She developed a passion for motoring, and at one time owned no fewer than 6 motorcars, at a time when there were fewer than 3,000 cars in the entire United Kingdom. 6 motorcars, when barely anyone in Britain owned one. She drove them herself, fast, through country lanes, wearing furs and diamonds, her St. Bernard dogs leaping around in the back seat. She was photographed. She was written about. She appeared in society magazines. Violet Charlesworth, the beautiful young heiress to a fortune, became briefly the most famous woman in the world, hunted across the globe, pursued by the press, living the life of royalty. But here's how the money actually worked. People lent her money because they believed the fortune was coming on her 25th birthday. Through posing as an heiress, Violet obtained £5,000 from a Rhyl doctor named Edward Hughes Jones, whom Violet had also promised to marry. She obtained money from bankers. from society acquaintances, from wealthy widows who had afternoon tea with her and came away convinced they were helping a charming young woman through a temporary inconvenience. Over 2 years, Violet racked up debts of £2 million in today's terms. And here is where it gets genius and genuinely disturbing. Violet used the money she obtained to speculate on the stock exchange, buying diamond tiaras and other jewelry and hiring country houses in England, Scotland, and Wales. She was gambling borrowed money on the stock market. Every time she won, she bought more cars, more diamonds, more houses. Every time she lost, she simply borrowed more, because the fortune was coming on her birthday, any day now. But here's the thing about a lie with a deadline. Eventually, the deadline arrives. Violet's 25th birthday was January 13th, 1909. The fortune was supposed to arrive. All the creditors, the doctors, the bankers, the society widows, the shopkeepers, the tailors, were waiting. The money did not come. Because there was no money, there had never been any money. There was no inheritance. There was no fortune. General Gordon had left nothing to Violet's family because General Gordon had never heard of Violet's family. The whole thing, from the cherry red motor cloak in Derby in 1905, had been a magnificent, brazen, meticulously maintained lie. On January 3rd, 1909, 10 days before her birthday, Violet staged a fatal car crash off the coastal road in North Wales. The next morning, her bottle green Minerva motorcar was found, its windshield smashed, hanging off the cliff. There was no body, only her hat, a pocket map, and a suede diary left in the nearby grass. The newspapers erupted. Britain's most famous heiress, dead, thrown from her car, lost in the waves. Her creditors were devastated. The society pages ran tributes. And Violet was on a train to Scotland. The Highland archives still hold an old ledger with the Charlesworth sisters' names as guests at the Northern Meeting Ball of 1909. Violet's last desperate attempt to find a wealthy benefactor. She was at a ball. While the whole of Britain thought she was dead, while her creditors were mourning her, she was dancing. And remember what I told you at the beginning, the detail that made every single creditor feel like a fool, the warnings they had all received in writing. We're almost there, because what happened next changed everything. The police were not as convinced as the newspapers. No body had been found. And when the creditors came forward, one after another, the scale of what Violet had done started to become clear. By March of 1909, the London bankruptcy courts confirmed that Violet owed sums in the region of £17,000, over £1.3 million in today's money. A nationwide manhunt began. Violet was now front-page news, not as a tragic dead heiress, but as Britain's most wanted fraudster. Every newspaper in the country was running her photograph. Every police force in Britain was looking for her. She was found weeks later on a Scottish island, alive. Well, completely composed. When a reporter finally tracked her down, Violet gave a smiling explanation of the accident. The smashed windscreen, a blow to the head, an uncontrollable urge to flee. Never once slipping out of character. She was still performing. Even caught. Even cornered. Even with the entire British press surrounding her, she was still Violet Gordon, unfortunate heiress, victim of circumstance. And now, the detail that should make your jaw drop. By the time she was found out, estimates suggest she had made more than £4 million from her schemes, probably involving many unnamed sources, including married men who never came forward out of shame. Every single person who had given Violet money had received the same information. At some point, in letters, in conversation, through mutual acquaintances, every creditor had been told something that should have stopped them. They had been told the fortune was unverified, that the inheritance could not be confirmed, that nobody had actually seen the will. And they gave her the money anyway. Because she wore diamonds, because she drove expensive motor cars, because she served excellent tea, because she was charming and confident and absolutely certain the money was coming. Because in Edwardian Britain, looking rich was the same as being rich, and Violet understood that better than anyone. Violet Charlesworth was arrested and put on trial. Violet and her mother Miriam were convicted of fraud. They spent 3 years serving their sentence in Aylesbury prison. But before the verdict, there was the trial itself. And this is the moment I promised you at the beginning, the moment in the courtroom. During the public trial, the prosecution asked Violet directly, was she a very clever girl? Clever as to telling a story? And Violet, in the dock, charged with multiple counts of fraud, facing prison, did not flinch. She did not apologize. She did not weep. She did not throw herself on the mercy of the court. She kept self-identifying as Miss Gordon throughout the trial, never breaking character, giving her last great performance even as the final curtain came down. She sat in that courtroom and continued to be Violet Gordon, the heiress, the goddaughter of a war hero, a woman of impeccable breeding and enormous future wealth. Even as the judge sentenced her, even as she was led away, the performance never stopped. In an era in which the average salary was approximately £70 per annum, she had accumulated money and debts equating to £27,000, the equivalent today of more than £4 million. And the reason why this story has been largely overlooked continues to puzzle historians. Perhaps because the men she swindled were too embarrassed to fully publicize what had happened to them. Think about that. Married men who had given money to a young woman they had been promised to, men with reputations, with titles, with positions in society, too embarrassed to come forward. Their embarrassment protected her. In 1912, Violet and her mother were released from Aylesbury prison. Violet hit the headlines once again, and then disappeared. She fled to Scotland. She may have taken on another alias, she may have married, she may have emigrated. After her release, there was interest in making her story into a film. She was paid a vast sum to appear in music halls around London, simply as herself. But here is the final, perfect detail. She found she couldn't perform. She walked on stage, and the audience jeered and booed her as a pantomime villain. The woman who had performed flawlessly for 9 years, who had conned bankers and doctors and society gentlemen without a single crack in the facade, couldn't handle a live audience. Because a live audience wasn't handing her money. They were seeing through her. And Violet Charlesworth had never learned how to handle that. After 1912, she vanished completely. No confirmed record, no confirmed death, no confirmed new identity. Just gone. History has rather left this forgotten and beautiful Edwardian woman in its wake. She was successful in at least 2 of her 3 major cons. She was clever, resourceful, cunning, ruthless, and beautiful. She changed women's fashion, entered the lexicon of the English language, and became more famous than almost any woman of her era, for almost nothing. A woman from a working-class family in Stafford, who decided that the rules of Edwardian society, the rules that said a woman of her background could never be wealthy, could never be powerful, could never walk into a room and have everyone stand up, were simply a story, and she would write a better one. She was wrong in the end. But for 9 years, she was absolutely, brilliantly, magnificently right. The car on the cliff in North Wales, the smashed windscreen, the hat in the grass, the creditors weeping. And Violet, on a train to Scotland, heading to a ball, still wearing the diamonds. If this story made you feel something complicated, if you're not quite sure whether to be horrified or quietly impressed, that's exactly how Edwardian Britain felt too. Subscribe for more hidden British history every week. The stories that got left out of the textbook. Because the people who got left out of the textbook are almost always the most interesting ones.